Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here, and this is going to be a discussion video on the recent announcement of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. And also, I suppose I'll talk about what else happened at the announcement with Pokemon Quest and the 2019 mainline Pokemon games that they also announced. And Pokemon Quest, to get it out of the way, I have played a little bit of it. I probably played it for about an hour. It seems alright for a kind of game that's going to be coming to mobile. It's also available on Switch. It is your standard like free-to-play microtransaction focused game of like you have energy, you can only do a certain amount of stuff, but you end up kind of earning it so that you can in general play as much as you want, but I think you will hit walls with that. It seems very basic, but it's somewhat enjoyable because you're still leveling up, you're still kind of making your Pokemon more powerful. I haven't evolved anything yet, but that's in the game, so that's going to be fun when it happens. I'm interested to see what it looks like at higher levels, just because right now most of my Pokemon don't even have 2 attacks. I want to see the kind of strategy that comes in once I have access to more Pokemon. It feels a little too limiting where I am right now, but it's all right. That's the way I describe it. I think it's worth checking out. If you have a Switch, I say just download it, check it out. Probably don't spend money on the microtransactions unless you really like it. Art style with the whole cube idea it's pretty cool. I think it's a art style that's kind of popular with the whole Minecraft stuff, and it definitely has an appeal to it. So I think it's unique enough. It's kind of surprise, fun little thing that I think added something to this announcement that was needed, because the core of the announcement is Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. And then they kind of brought people who were maybe let down with the information that was revealed in those games by having the 2019 games there to be, this is what you're looking for more than likely. If these games aren't for you, the 2019 games are there. And then here's this game where you can actually play it right now if you want to. That like they kind of covered everything. Here's what's coming in the future. Here's a game right now. And then here's the game in the near future. So I think the announcement overall together worked well. If they had just announced Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, I think we'd be seeing a bit more of a negative reaction. But because there's the hope into the future for the proper game, I suppose, they have more or less confirmed that the one they announced at E3 last year is the 2019 game rather than this, but we don't know exactly how like the development's going to overlap or anything like that. I assume some of the technology involved in this game is the same technology they're using to develop the 2019 one. But yeah, let's discuss it. The rumors were confirmed to be true. I think more or less all of them were correct, I think, minus a couple of little things. The games are Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. They are calling them, they're making a point to say they are considering the mainline Pokemon games in the same vein, kind of, as X and Y, Sun and Moon. But they're also, in the details, clarifying that this is a mainline game not as focused on the competitive people, whereas the 2019 game is more for the competitive people, the hardcore fans. So immediately that feels weird, and that obviously I think a lot of people want to kind of call it a spin-off, which it isn't really, but it is a sort of a reimagining. It's a different take on a mainline Pokemon game in that, yes, it's an RPG, but there's enough Pokemon Go elements and aspects of the standard RPG that they've taken out that it more or less kind of feels like its own thing, with the fact that we know that it's not going to be as online focused. I think this is something I haven't really been able to fully clarify. Some people are saying there's no online in the game. Then it was kind of confirmed that like that's not quite true, but it's just kind of limited online. It's not as you'd expect it to be based on the other games. But there's something there. And then the most important thing being the removal of wild Pokemon battles is definitely something that annoyed a lot of people, because watching the reveal, the coverage of the reveal as it came out, The excitement as people realized there was going to be a big announcement today was incredible. And right up until like the trailer came out and there was initially like super hype. Some people of course didn't like it just based on the art style, but mostly excitement. But it was after some of the details began to come out. People began to analyze what they saw in the trailer, what they didn't see in the trailer. No wild Pokemon battle. The look that it seemed like from the trailer. It's just when you encounter a wild Pokemon, it is the Pokemon Go style where you just can throw a Pokeball and that's about it. And it turns out that that is the case. They confirmed that you can't fight the wild Pokemon, which means that you can't gain experience by just kind of choosing to defeat the wild Pokemon instead of capturing them. We don't know if they'll do a thing where like you gain experience points from catching Pokemon, and that'll be another way to level up. And ultimately, I would say that for me, that is the biggest thing that they should have explained, but they didn't. How does experience work in this game? We know there are still trainers, but trainers are not the like primary way to go about leveling up. In the main story, yes, you gain most of your levels from battling the trainers for sure, but you always do a little bit of wild Pokemon fighting along the way, if not just to see what Pokemon are available in each kind of section of grass and so on. You usually end up fighting a couple of them just to, you know, go up a level on the way to the next group of trainers. They've taken that out. Now, they seem like there are more kind of simplistic games, so maybe the difficulty level won't be as high. I feel kind of weird saying that because like Sun and Moon, X and Y were both fairly easy games in terms of like the main story. But the difficulty level probably won't even be as high as them if that's the case, unless there is some other mechanic about how you actually go about leveling up. Because I think we know there are experience bars, because on the battle screen when they do show a trainer battle, you can see the Pokemon with experience bars. They just haven't confirmed how you gain that experience, presumably outside of just the standard battles. Because what it also does is it means that like it more or less takes out EVs as a thing in terms of being actively able to, you know, EV train a Pokemon. Because without the ability to specifically search out Pokemon which give specific EVs, you can't effectively EV train unless they're going to do a thing where you can consistently re-battle any trainer in the game, and there's something to keep track of what Pokemon each trainer has, and then you can do it. Or they have the catching more or less be the same thing, where like if your lead Pokemon, if your lead Pokemon gains EVs based on if you catch the specific Pokemon, rather than a battle taking place. That could work potentially, but I really don't get why they just didn't leave it in as an option. Some of their kind of quotes that they came out kind of was talking about like they want to simplify the systems and stuff like that, and this is where I think there's been a little bit of a backlash against the whole idea of this, in that fundamentally like Pokemon, like it's like they're treating them as these like overly complicated games when they're really not. There's a lot of depth there when you really get into it, but fundamentally it's simple. You have 4 attacks and you just have to roughly keep track of some kind of type matchups. Obviously there's depth to that, but the basic thing of like, here's what my attacks do, how do I get through this battle with my Pokemon versus theirs, is simple at a base level. You don't ever in Pokemon have to interact with the Pokemon nature, the nature of a Pokemon system, their personality. You don't have to interact with IVs if you don't want to. EVs just kind of happen in the background even if you're not keeping track of them. And it's basically just choosing where you want those stats rather than them just being more or less assigned randomly as you go through the game. The depth is there if you want it, and it feels like this is taking something that like you didn't need to kind of remove and removing it and then giving another system. And it feels like they're trying to solve a problem that was never particularly there in the first place. And I think that's where I'd have the issue of like, who is this game for? It's clearly not for the hardcore fans because you've taken out a lot of the key elements that would interest them. I think it is to get as many people who are playing Pokemon Go and maybe Pokemon Go only into the mainline games. But I think they've done as best as they could with like Sun and Moon and the Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon to make those games accessible to anyone because they're so simple. There's just such a tutorial at the start of those games. Is simplifying it even more and adding Go mechanics going to really do that? I assume to a degree, but at the same time, the reason people are invested in Go is because of the way that game works. Because it's on your phone, keeping track of your real world location, and the Pokemon that you encounter being specific to whatever location you're in, and the fun of like having like a real world experience at the same time as you're catching Pokemon. I don't really think that there are that many people out there who are so invested that like they love like the mechanics of the Pokemon Go game. It's more of the gimmick of being able to catch Pokemon around the place, kind of real life style. This game kind of removes that because it's not about your real world location. It's just in the RPG world walking around, but when you have a random encounter, instead you do see the Pokemon beforehand, and that's the Go style. And I'm wondering if when this game comes out, will they potentially have missed the mark here? Of like, they've taken away too much of what Go is, that fundamentally people aren't invested in this game because it's not Go. And then on the other side of things, you've introduced too much Pokemon Go that you've basically made this game not particularly interesting to people who just want the RPG stuff because you've taken out so many of those key elements. And I'm wondering, have they kind of cut both ends down too much and there's kind of not enough left in the middle? Because to me, I see the appeal of this game as being like, it's the first proper Pokemon game on Switch. Even if it is kind of limited in some ways and is smaller than we expected, it is still this kind of core thing that is going to grab people, that it is the first Pokemon game in HD on Switch, and it's a Yellow, not remake, but it's based on Yellow to a degree, and it's the original 151, and that's cool to a degree. You're going to get the appeal just because people want a fun Pokemon adventure, and this will probably supply that, but it's going to have limited mechanics and potentially some mechanics that are too far down the Go side of things to invest the hardcores. At least that's my impression right now, in that I think I will end up buying this game not because it super impressed me as a game based on what I saw and what I read, but more so because I'm a Pokemon fan and this is the game that they are presenting first. I'm a little bit too impatient to just wait for the 2019 game, knowing that this is here. And that's the thing. I think this is going to be okay, but I think it will get criticized when it comes out. And I think that will be somewhat important to just make it clear that, given that they've delayed the hardcore game, that they don't take too many of the changes that they've made to Let's Go and put it into the other games. Like, that's the big fear that people have. That's why you're going to see a lot of people very negative about this announcement, is because there's going to be this fear that with still over a year to go until the game that people want comes out, potentially some of these mechanics catch on with the more casual people, the Pokemon Go people, and they decide that that is a key part of Pokemon now, and suddenly there are no wild encounters in any Pokemon games. Everything is done with the Pokemon Go style thing. They're removing all these other elements, this and that, and they're more focused on nostalgia rather than kind of new stuff, and being aware of like that people love Generation like 5 and 6 and so on as well. And I think, to me, that's the other part of this, is that I think it's cool enough that it's the original 151 in that I grew up playing like red, yellow, like I pretty much played one of every generation as it's gone through. So this is the Pokemon I started off with. But now, I personally wouldn't say that Generation 1 is the best generation of Pokemon. It's got a couple of, I think, really good ones. But I'd lean more towards like Generation 2 and 4 being like the best overall group. And this might feel a little limiting because I think the other side of this is some of the other details they've revealed that like you start off with either Pikachu or Eevee, of course, but it's a special Pikachu and a special Eevee that neither of which can evolve, but you can like customize them to wear clothes. But that if you catch another Eevee or another Pikachu, those ones can evolve. That just seems a little weird in that like you want to keep your starter Pokemon, but you can't evolve it. So I'm wondering, will there be any like mechanics thing to account for that? Just regards to like power level of like, is there like a built-in kind of light ball style item thing in the Pikachu that makes it powerful enough to take out like fully powered Pokemon? Eevee especially, just as a normal type who, like, again, I haven't really looked too much into Eevee's moveset in a while, but like just on its own isn't particularly strong. How's that going to work in terms of like a lot of people are going to want to keep that as a key member of their team. What's going to keep that on the power level with the rest? Given that you can't evolve it, and that makes me also think like, oh, because of that, you are kind of committing to potentially making the game a little easier, because you have to account for the fact that most people are going to have a non-fully evolved Pokemon in their team. So I think they probably will have to add some sort of special element to those Pokemon, whether it be a special ability or something like that, that puts them on par with a fully evolved Pokemon. They confirmed some Alola forms are going to be in here. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but that could be cool, because like Alolan Raichu, if we can get to that at some point, that sounds pretty cool. Like Alolan Golem, that sort of stuff. That I'd actually like that if they are actually available. Other than that, I suppose it's just, again, to clarify that I think these games look good. I actually like the graphics. I think the extra polish of seeing it in HD really does stand out. I was wondering, like, would the potentially less ambitious like style of the game, and that it's still going to have the standard like isometric view that we have in Sun and Moon, would that bring down the fact that the kind of quality of the graphics is better? But no, I think it just looks really, really good now. And I think for me, knowing that there's a game in 2019 and that they have this art style that looks pretty good, I assume they're going to change up stylistically a little bit for the 2019 game. And I think if they get that style right with the quality of graphics that they have, that could be excellent. But this does look good. Like, I like that we have the following Pokemon back. They continue with the whole Pokeride system. It seems like, I don't know if it's going to be called that, but something along those lines is going to continue to be in the games. And the battles seem, the battles that we saw seemed okay, just regards to like visuals and so on. So, as someone who probably will get one of these games, I'm happy enough, but I'm also cautious and a bit skeptical about how good they're actually going to be in practice. And definitely very, very kind of cautious about the reception of these and how that might affect the development of the 2019 game. Just because if you've seen my discussion videos in the lead up to X and Y coming out, in the lead up to Sun and Moon coming out, pretty much one of the first things on my list for both of those games was that what I really wanted was some sort of a difficulty kind of selector added into the game. That when you start off the game, you can choose easy, normal, or hard mode to play the game on. That X and Y especially, and Sun and Moon also, were both so easy in terms of the main story that you barely even have to try to get through the game with like no problems whatsoever. And I think that's just one of the things I want out of these games, is a little bit more of a challenge. I don't want every trainer I encounter to have 6 Pokemon, but getting towards the end of the game, I want to feel a little threatened by some of those trainers at the end of the game. And the battle things where like you do 3-on-3 battles with maybe more high-end Pokemon aren't enough, because they take away so much choice that it makes it difficult to even kind of do well unless you make perfect decisions. I think we need to see a little bit more of that come back into things. And because like they're the things that I want out of the game, let the Let's Go series taking stuff away rather than adding stuff in is obviously a negative for me. But I can accept that, knowing that I'm not the main audience for this game. That there is a game coming for me, and that's in 2019. And I think that's most of what I want to say here. In terms of my thoughts on this. You know, the whole Pokeball controller thing seems cool enough as like a bit of a gimmick. I think it will probably sell really, really well, especially knowing that the game has like a local multiplayer and you can do a kind of 2-player mode thing. I think I'm just waiting to see more of the specific details of like, they haven't really got into like, is it gyms and the you know, the champion, the Elite Four, that sort of things, or like, does it work in a slightly different way? Are island challenges sort of in this and like slightly changed up? That's what they haven't really confirmed just yet. Similarly, the experience thing that I talked about at the start. How do you level up Pokemon? Like, what if I find a Dratini, a level 10 Dratini, when the rest of my Pokemon are on like level 50? How do I train that Dratini up to the point where I can have it be a solid member of my team? Where do the experience points come from for Dratini? I assume there's going to be experience share in the game, but there's only so many trainers in the game. How am I going to get to that level while not actually being able to properly battle with Dratini because he's so leveled? Under-leveled for so long. Those sort of questions, the things that you encounter in Pokemon games now that are easy to solve because you know exactly what to do. You can, experience share against like high-level Pokemon in the wild, or experience share with trainers, but also you want to potentially do a little bit of Eevee training, which involves battling wild Pokemon. And you can do that because you know where the level 10 wild Pokemon are to have that Dratini battle. Those are the questions that I want to see answered, of just how do you play this like a normal Pokemon game when you've taken out such an important mechanic. But yeah, that's most of what I want to say here about this. I hopefully didn't come across overly negative. I was a bit frustrated last night because obviously I was up until like 4 a.m. kind of watching the announcement and the initial aftermath, and after like all of the little details had come out that like, oh, people were saying no online, no wild Pokemon battles, I was like, what is this game? How is it even Pokemon if you've taken away these? I've kind of calmed down. I can obviously see what the game is aimed for, but I still have my doubts about it. But again, I'll probably end up getting it unless it's revealed that they've really, really heavily kind of dumbed down the mechanics of the game beyond what we already know of. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the reveals. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on all of these reveals: Pokemon Quest, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and the 2019 Pokemon games. How excited are you for them? What are your thoughts? But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.